Welcome to the channel. We've got the interesting story of Stanley Menzo. So in his first post as manager, Johan Cruyff wanted a special goalkeeper, player who matched his all-round attacking vision for Ajax, and Stanley Menzo fitted the bill. Menzo had been at the Amsterdam club for a few years. When Cruyff took over in 1985, he was an understudy and had only played a few matches. But under the Dutch legend's guidance, Menzo went into the first team aged 21. Cruyff moved on to Barcelona 3 years later, but the young goalkeeper would keep his place for 7 seasons, a star of the side that won the Cup Winners' Cup in 1987 and the UEFA Cup in 1992. Over the course of a 16-year career in football, Menzo also won 5 domestic league and cup titles across the Dutch game and in Belgium, achieved with a style that helped change what many thought a goalkeeper could be. He was an extra man who could do more than keep the opposition out, an early example of the sweeper keeper. But those years at the top were very tough. Born in Suriname in 1963, Menzo moved to Holland when he was age 6. The racist abuse started early in his career. By the time he was at his peak, it reached a horrible intensity. Public, frequent, and large scale. In many of the games he played, there were monkey chants, racist taunts, bananas thrown on the field. Menzo says now, it hurt me very hard. When you have half of the stadium abusing you, you feel very lonely. When I think back, I can't imagine how I did it, how I played my matches. Racism was such a regular feature of Dutch football at that time that almost nobody talked about it, including those who were being targeted, Menzo says. Even though he tried not to let it affect him, it made him question himself. He added, I never spoke about what was happening because we didn't know how to deal with it. Some players said they didn't hear it. I can't imagine that. I heard it always, even when it was one person. It was normal. It just became normal. I thought it was maybe my personality that made me feel and hear it. Maybe I wasn't strong enough for professional football. But Menzo did show strength, and on more than one occasion, he physically stood up to abusers. The first time was in November 1987, still early on in his Ajax career at the age of 24. It happened after yet another away game at which he was targeted. He was coming out of the dressing room, walking across towards a team bus, carrying a box. A young man approached him. He asked Menzo if there were bananas in the box. Menzo put the box down on the ground. I said, "What did you say?" And he said it again, Menzo continued. At that moment, I was not myself, I think, and I hit him. The first feeling was just relief. It was like the pressure fell off me. Throughout the game, the abuse was there, and here after the game again too. Now it was boom. Menzo struck the man full in the face. His abuser walked off with a bloody nose and broken tooth. The whole incident was witnessed by the opposition team's manager, who defended Menzo when reports emerged in the press. That's how his mother found out what had happened. According to Menzo's biography, she reckoned the abusive young man would have lost more than his teeth if he'd said it to her. There was no comeback from the authorities, but then little or nothing was done to try to stop racism regularly aimed at the goalkeeper either. Later in his career, he was playing in Belgium in the 90s and yet another banana was thrown in his direction. This time, instead of ignoring it, as he had so many times before, Menzo picked it up, peeled it and took a bite. The result was laughter, a lifting of tension. It was a good reaction, he says. It made me feel good and it gave a positive reaction to the fans. But Menzo also believed that part of the reaction came because he was older, better known and more respected by that time. As a young man, such a reaction would have been impossible, he says now. It's more than 20 years since the former Ajax, PSV and Dutch international goalkeeper called time on his playing career. He was collaborating on a book about his life with a journalist and author, Mike van Dam, as the Black Lives Matter campaign reached new global relevance in 2020 following the murder of George Floyd. For Menzo, the contrast between the 80s and the 90s and the present day could not be clearer in terms of how football confronts racism. Players speak out, officials and governing bodies run campaigns. He says he can't imagine the teams walking off in protest back in his day. The problem is far from resolved, but Menzo sees progress. He said, "What I enjoy about the BLM discussion was that I didn't see black people demonstrating against racism. I saw black and white people, and that's the whole issue. If I felt it as a black person, see it and hear it, do you see it and hear it as a white person? If not, then we have a problem. If yes, we can solve it together. In football, we can change things. We can use football to change things." It has taken a long time for Menzo to appreciate what he achieved in football, not just because of the constant abuse that he faced, but because he was often worrying too much about his performance to enjoy success. He said, "Most of the time, I was only seeing the negative things, the goals that I couldn't save. I was too busy with those things and I forgot to see the positive." That feeling continued, he says, until he came to collaborate on the book. It's called Menzo, The Battle Under the Bar. He said, "In the beginning, I was a little bit strange talking about myself, but I came to like it, and I saw other things in my life and my career that I enjoy now and I hadn't enjoyed before." You see that when you've done a great job as a player. And in the reactions since publication, he's finally been able to appreciate how others view him as well. He said, "I never knew they saw me like that, as an athlete, as a great goalkeeper, as somebody who was always fighting against racism. It made me proud that people thought of me in that way." Although he finished playing many years ago, Menzo remains in football. It's a relationship that began on the streets of Amsterdam. The football he played as a child on the streets was a major form and influence of his life and career. When the whole world seemed to be inside watching the 1974 World Cup final when the Netherlands lost to West Germany, a 10-year-old Menzo was out with the ball at his feet. He would always play football, street football growing up, continuing even after he'd first broken into the Ajax team. In more recent years, he's worked as a goalkeeping coach for the Dutch national team when Marco van Basten was in charge in 2004 and 2008. In 2007-08, he led FC Volendam to promotion to the Eredivisie and has also coached in Belgium, South Africa and China. He's now a technical director of the Aruba national team and he's also serving as a stand-in coach. In June, he guided them to the first win in 3 years with a 3-1 victory over the Cayman Islands in a World Cup qualification. It's all for the love of the game, which, through good and ill, has been his life. He said, "I have to give back to football because football made me the person I am."